Welcome to the Franchise Masters podcast, where aspiring entrepreneurs learn what it takes to find, buy, and build successful franchise businesses. My name is Drew Carpenito, and I'm your host as we dive into these fascinating behind-the-scenes stories of people who have used surprising franchises to create massive success. I'm glad you're here. Let's dig in. Welcome to the Franchise Masters podcast. I am super excited to be talking with one of my friends who I've gotten to know really well over the past few years, who is a part of a company and has played a key role in a company that has become one of the biggest, baddest, and I mean that in a very positive way, things in franchising. Lou, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Drew. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm so honored that you are here and looking forward to just talking about all the interesting things that you've been a part of and this new opportunity, this new brand that you're heading up. Yeah. So but in the spirit of the Franchise Masters podcast, what we do here is we talk about folks that have gone on to use franchising to have success professionally and personally. So I'd love to dig a little bit into you and get to know you a little bit better in terms of how you got into this this organization called Xponential Fitness that we'll talk about, and now leading up their brand new brand called Body Fit Training, which is super interesting. So yeah, man, I'll kick it over to you. I'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
Awesome. Yeah, I like a lot of stories. There's a lot of twists and turns, and you don't just get here on a straight path. And like a lot of, I should say, entrepreneurial stories. My quick background, I've been in health and fitness for 18 plus years now, somewhere in that range. And in this world of franchising in the health and fitness space for 14 of those years, almost 15 now. And it's not an accident, that I'm here. And I think that's one of the best parts of the story. And I don't think anyone can appreciate where they're at unless they've started in places where they weren't happy. So, where I sit today, I'm happy, I'm having fun, doing something that I love. Rewind back to post-college days, like a lot of people coming out of college, it was, hey, I need a job. And found a job in IT consulting. And, no offense to anyone out there that's in IT consulting, fantastic career for the right person. But what I learned in those early days of post-college and like 9 to 5 working and like, oh boy, I'm on my own. I got to provide for at least myself for a short period of time. And I need to work. And it was a grind. And it was, looking back now, I can say it was a grind because I didn't enjoy what I was doing. I was doing it for the paycheck. And at the time, I've always been a learner. I've always been someone that's willing, I love reading books. I love reading business books. At the time, I was super interested in business, but I didn't have any kind of business degree. I had a science degree. I was a physics major of all things in college. Why? Don't ask me why.
It's okay. I was a psychology major. Don't. We're not knocking science majors here. We're good.
It was, I wanted to challenge myself. I think ultimately was why. But IT consulting. So I was like, you know what? This was a small business, and I liked. It was really interesting. This was, again, I think you always have to look for the positive things and where you're at in life. And the owner of this IT consulting company believed in an open book management style, which means he shared all the financials of the business with all of the employees. So this was like eye-opening to me. Like, what is a P&L? What is a P&L? What is a balance sheet? Like, I had no idea. I had taken 0 business classes in college. And here he is teaching this small company of IT consultants of how to make good day-to-day decisions in your whatever you're doing for his business based on what the P&L and balance sheet and what our goals were. And and like just light bulbs started going off. I was like, oh, that makes sense. It makes sense why he's not paying us this huge salary, but there's bonuses based on doing these activities or doing these, achieving these things. And so that opened my eyes to this world of business. And I started taking classes towards my MBA. as I was working. And, that's been a theme throughout my career and my life of like, all right, I want to continue to challenge myself and continue to learn and grow and develop skills, because I'm not where I want to be, and that's just been a theme for my personal life. And I'll hit the fast forward button here. It was going into work every day, sitting next to these people that actually were passionate about IT and computers and IT consulting and working in this industry. And I was like, you know what? One of these things is not like the other. Like I've got to find something else. And I had a good friend of mine that was a personal trainer and physical therapist. He owned his own health club. It was like a private, independent, single location club. And he did a ton of personal training and physical therapy out of it. And it was more personal training than anything. And he was like, hey, why don't you come to work for me? And I was like, no, I can't do that. Like that. I'm on this career track. I'm in the corporate world. I'm taking classes towards my MBA. Like I am on the corporate ladder. Like I got to keep going. And, that's where this kind of entrepreneurial side of me started to kick in. And after it, and it took a while, a couple lunches, a couple coffees with my buddy. And at the time I was just married. So this was early to mid 2000s. So I was just married, no kids. And what got me, this is what got me. And he had to sell me on this, my buddy. He's like, hey, number one, you're just married, no kids. So like, there's no pressure for you to truly, it's not like you're leaving without a job. You're going to work. I'm going to pay you. So,
right.
Like you're going to come work with me, but I'm going to pay you. So you're going to have a paycheck. Number one. Number two, you want a new job anyway. So what do you have to lose? If you don't like it in 6 months, go look for another job. Like I'm no skin off my back. And that was what I needed to hear at that time to take the risk. And at that time, I associated leaving a job as super risky. But looking back, that was like, there was no risk. That was like, my wife and I were living in an apartment. We were paying $900 a month. That's like peanuts,
But it's
with
all
no
like in the
kids.
heat of the moment, right? It's all relative. Right?
Yes,
When you
it
make a big
was. So that was my
decisions.
first big like entrepreneurial decision. And I made the decision after I got over like the risk hurdle. It was a hell yeah, because it was something that I thought I was passionate about. I knew, like, athlete my whole life, always worked out, even post college. My wife and I, we cook a lot. We're focused on our nutrition. So that was like, I was like, I feel pretty good that I'm gonna like this. And it's just, I had to get over that risk factor, that risk hurdle. And so once I got over that, I was like, okay, I'm going to have a job, and I'm making, like, it was so silly. It was like, he's going to pay me the same amount of money that I'm making right now. So it's like, but it's in an industry where I could potentially love. And so once I got over that mental hurdle of like, I'm going to make, so 5 years I worked there, some of the best working years of my life. I went from a 9 to 5 grind in corporate America to a entrepreneurial gym environment. I had to be there some mornings at 5 a.m. I was there some nights until 10 p.m. I was working weekends, almost every weekend. At some point, I was in the gym. Absolutely loved it. Fell in love with it. The people that I worked with, all of a sudden, I'm like working side by side with these personal trainers and clinicians. Eventually, we brought on massage therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists, all these people in this industry of health, fitness, wellness. And it was like, I pinch me. I can't believe like I get to come in every day and do this and work with them. And I kept making more money each year. I was making more money, and I was like, wow. And this is where another light bulb went off of, if I can continue to work in an industry that I love, where essentially I'm not even considering it or calling it work, because it's something that I love doing this. I'm also making a difference in people's lives. So that was important in my own personal passion of like, I'm not personally delivering the actual physical therapy, but the work that some people are doing on my team is dramatically changing and improving the lives of people. So doing something that I love, changing people's lives, and I'm able to provide for my family. So in that 5 years, I had my first child. So then it was like, oh, okay, I'm making more money and now I have more responsibility, but I also have a child, and my wife and I had plans of having more. And it was all moving in that right direction. And it was awesome, but it reached a plateau, and then it was, okay, well, I don't want to lose out on like this, doing something I'm passionate about, making a difference in people's lives, and be able to provide for my family. Like those are my three big criteria. And then I started looking because I just reached a plateau of where I was going. And this is, people do that, reach this all the time. And I just, anytime I feel like I'm at that place, I just start having conversations with people, and I just start kind of looking around at, and I ran into, or I found this opportunity. It was a boutique fitness franchise. And this was all in the Boston area. This is where my wife and I lived post-college, where she was from. So it was a boutique fitness franchise, and it was young, small, 25 or 30 locations. And I knew nothing about franchising. So I was like, well, I mean, this is like a shot in the dark, but let me apply. It was a job working there, and ended up like getting called in for an interview, meeting the owner. And the owner just loved that in my background, I worked, my main responsibility was running basically a glorified personal training studio, a larger personal training studio that offered physical therapy, but also chiropractic, acupuncture, massage. But all I was doing all day was I lived at the front desk, and I talked with people, and I sold personal training services. And so he's like, that's what I'm looking for. I need someone to go basically drive around all of these locations and teach my franchise partners how to sell personal training. And I was like, I can do that.
Nice.
It was like, all right, when can you start?
Nice. So that was like that must have been like the forefront of when boutique fitness was starting to emerge as this thing.
It was 08.
Wow. Okay.
Early 09. It was somewhere in that 08, 09 range. So it was really interesting. It was actually in 09, because I remember like looking back on this time, and essentially I worked in two different boutique fitness brands during that recession.
Yeah.
And the interesting part is both of those brands grew in different ways, but like the independent health club grew in revenue, which is good. You obviously want that when you're the owner. So we grew revenue in that 08 into 09 timeframe. And then the fitness franchise that I went to work for in that time, they had started in 06, started franchising in 07. And that owner continued to sell locations, territories through 08, 09. And we continued 10, 11, and 12. And I ended up working there for 8+ years. The last 5.5 years I was there, I was the president of that franchise. We grew it to over 100 locations nationwide. And it was just like, you look back at that time and you're like, one, wow, we were able to sell franchise territories to people during the recession. And two, they were actually signing leases during that recession. And then if you talk with them and they look back at that time, they'll tell you, wow, that was the best decision of my life.
Yeah. Best deal you're ever going to get, right, on a lease.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
They got this, 10-year lease with a couple of options that was the best deal that they would have ever gotten.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was
interesting.
That was, 8.5-year blur as well. It was this crazy time where, and this is where, for me, that's where I cut my teeth on franchising. And I, again, I'm a learner. I'm always willing to raise my hand and be like, yeah, I'll do that. I don't have any experience doing it, but I'll try it. I'll learn it. I'll learn from it. And so it was a very entrepreneurial experience as well, which I appreciated at the time because the owner had franchising experience, but he had a very small and young team of just go-getters. Like, we're just going to go conquer the world right now. And I loved that environment, and he allowed and opened all of us to be able to just take on whatever we wanted to take on. And so I got exposed to franchise sales and what is all involved in that, because that's a whole world unto itself. And then I got involved into the legal side of franchising and FDD, franchise disclosure documents, and I eventually took over managing that process of the FDD every year and working with a franchise attorney. And then the marketing and advertising of boutique fitness and a marketing fund, and what a marketing fund was and what we could spend money on. And I ended up managing the marketing fund for ultimately 100+ locations around the country. And I took over little bits and pieces before I became president. And then that's why ultimately he named me president, is because I showed proficiency in taking over all these different areas of the world of franchising. And I'm very grateful to this day for that opportunity, because I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have those opportunities to learn without having the experience under my belt.
And so that was your first experience as president of a national brand. And
yes.
Little did you know probably that you would go on to replicate that a couple more times, right? At the time.
I had no idea, and that's the beauty of, as you're growing in your profession, you never know where it may lead. And what I've learned is the world of franchising is on the smaller side. It's growing, but it's on the smaller side. And the world of boutique fitness franchising is even smaller. And I guess I was on the radar of some people at previous to Xponential. It started out as just Club Pilates, and Anthony Geisler, our owner and founder, had previous experience in boutique fitness with LA Boxing and then with UFC gyms, and eventually bought Club Pilates and started growing that brand before he brought in private equity and started this world of Xponential Fitness, or this brand and company of Xponential Fitness. And soon after Anthony did that, he formed Xponential Fitness, put Club Pilates underneath that umbrella. The first real brand, external brand that he purchased was Cycle Bar. And then the next brand that he purchased was StretchLab. And that's when, at some point in that time, it was actually, a couple months, 6 months previous to Xponential is when I first met Anthony. And just because of our being in the world of boutique fitness and franchising. And, I remember him saying like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. Can't tell you much about it, but, let's stay in touch, kind of thing. And then, somewhere in that 3 to 6 month window is when he started Xponential Fitness. And soon after that is when we reconnect, and he's like, hey, so I just bought this brand called StretchLab and I want you to come run it. I was like, okay. Can I learn a little more before I say yes, or do I just have to say yes now? And, like any true entrepreneur, Anthony likes to move fast. And, he flew my wife and I out to California, to just meet and talk about the brand. And, he gave me his vision of what he was going to do. And this was, again, I love these stories because it's great to take a moment and reminisce. First time I met Anthony was in the warehouse space of Club Pilates. And when I say warehouse, it was like true warehouse. And he had built this kind of really bad looking office, semi-private office space in the corner of the warehouse. And outside of his office was a 2 big stand-up tables where Ryan Junk was, who was the just named president of Cycle Bar, and one other person and 2 other people, something like this very small team, as he started to form Xponential, because he was out of space at Club Pilates. Like, Club Pilates was maxed out in their office space. He had purchased the beautiful office space that we have now. He had rented it, leased it signed a lease for it, but it was all concrete. There was nothing in it.
No way.
Yeah. And so my first, like, I don't know, 6 months, somewhere in that range, 3 to 6 months, was we started in that warehouse space behind Club Pilates. And that's
Wow.
where Cycle Bar not started, but that's where it started their exponential story, where StretchLab started their exponential story, where Row House started their exponential story. So we had at least 3 brands working out of that warehouse space until we went into temporary office space for another like 3-4 months or so before our actual, beautiful home office is now.
So I didn't realize this. So you were the president of the first, or one of the first brands that Xponential really kind of took from the ground and created, took it national, essentially.
Yeah.
Because Club Pilates had like 800 locations. That was kind of the flagship. And Cycle Bar had a bunch of locations at the time that Expo purchased them, if I remember correctly. And
Yes.
But StretchLab did not, right? There was like a few
StretchLab
in California.
was not a franchise.
It wasn't even a franchise. Okay.
It wasn't even a franchise. So it was 3 locations in LA and that was it. And
so so Anthony, I can imagine he's probably pretty convincing. I mean, Anthony Geisler's, you can read about it. The guy's, he is a visionary and
yes,
makes stuff happen kind of guy, but you were leading this national boutique fitness franchise brand. And then there's this thing called Xponential. There's this concept called StretchLab. Were you like, what was it like for you to kind of make the leap? Did you know right away? Or were you like, yeah, I don't know about this thing. And maybe I stay here and just where I'm comfortable and, keep riding this thing out.
It was interesting. It was similar in thought process to when I first made that decision and leap to go from IT consulting into the world of fitness. And it was like, I've reached a plateau, yes, stable and safe, but I'm not growing anymore. And I saw in Anthony, and more so I wanted to work with Anthony because I saw his track record of growing and selling LA boxing and then being a part of UFC Gym, which was another boutique fitness franchise. And then starting Club Pilates from, that was a very small franchise system and growing it into at least a couple hundred locations that he had before he brought in private equity. And so I was in an environment where the franchisor was a single owner and that's how he wanted to operate, and which is fine. And that was that's his decision. But then I had this opportunity to be a part of another thing. I didn't even know how to describe it at the time. It was going to be this big thing. And I just had that gut feeling being in the industry and seeing Anthony's track record. Like I want to have an opportunity to work with that guy and to be a part of what he's doing because I know it's going to be special.
Yeah.
And
when was that? So that was how many years ago was that?
2017. So that was 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years ago now. It was about 4.5 years ago. And it was like, there was that risk factor, right? Like when you really break it down, it was like established brand versus brand new concept in a new modality really of stretching. Stretching wasn't this widely accepted business model, and so there was definitely risk there. But again, it was like, it was interesting because we have this distinct memory, my wife and I, of being here in California without our kids. We left our kids with with my wife's parents, and we flew out here, and literally we were here for like a 24-hour window and took a red eye home. But while we were here, it was like this whirlwind tour of Orange County and, meeting with Anthony and getting deeper into his vision, spending time with him, we actually visited a potential school to send the kids to while we were here. And just being here and we knew there was risk involved, but we were at a time in our lives as well where the timing was right, if that makes sense for people. And I think if people are in that place, they'll know. And it was, and there's a lot of factors, parents and extended family and our nuclear family at this time, I have 3 kids now. And so it wasn't just one, it was 3. They were all in grade school. So that was a factor. And it was like, it's just like hey, there's always risk, but when you're in a career for a period of time, there's a certain level of trust that you need to have in yourself, in your skill set, as well as where you're going and who you're going to be working for and with. And those check the box for us in order to be able to make that leap personally, because it was this professionally, it was going to be this cool opportunity. And if it was a cool opportunity that didn't grow as fast as it grew, it was still going to be a cool opportunity.
Yeah.
And for what it turned into was something pretty amazing to be a part of.
So you packed up your family and young kids, moved across the country, started heading up StretchLab. And so fast forward 4.5 years, what happened with StretchLab? And what happened with Anthony's vision for Xponential?
Yeah, just 600 territories sold and 150 open through a pandemic, worldwide pandemic. No big deal.
No big deal. Yeah,
as I planned.
In California, being headquartered in California, right?
Exactly. And, I'd written down those are my goals, and no, I'm joking. I didn't write that.
And being a part of a company going public, right?
Yes.
Soon after a fitness conglomerate empire going public in the middle of a pandemic,
right.
You can't draw that story up, no matter who you are. I don't think you could write that one up the way it turned out.
And the parent company continuing to purchase additional brands,
right?
So we have 10 brands today. BFT was purchased towards the end of last year. Rumble was purchased, I think, earlier in the year, last year. Right. So, 8 brands, and then we hit the pause button for a little bit. And then we purchased number 9, which was Rumble, and then number 10, which was BFT. I mean, it's a crazy story. And the crazier part is when I talked with Anthony early, before I took the job, when I sat across from him, when we were driving around and, walking through this office space that I'm sitting in right now, he told me his vision. And I was like, my thought process was, if this dude even gets close to hitting these, it's going to be fun. And this is going to be really cool to be a part of. So yeah, there was something, you take risks in life, knowing, and I think this is the entrepreneurial way. You aim for the stars, and if you land on the moon, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and you got to listen to your gut too. I'd imagine, at some point, you can have all the data and think through, but you got to you got to listen to that thing inside that's kind of pointing you in a certain direction or trying to tell you something that you can't always make out and doesn't make sense, but it's you just have that feeling, right? I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure Anthony and the team were a big part of kind of what gave you that warm and fuzzy to feel comfortable making that big life change.
I mean, and anytime, we're talking about Franchise Masters podcast here, so I think something that's relevant for your listeners is I had this. I was in the grind in health and fitness, and then in franchising for a total of what was it, 10-ish years before even longer than that, closer to 12 years before I jumped over to Xponential Fitness. And so that jump into this world of Xponential Fitness was the risk, of course, but I knew what I had in terms of a skill set, and I knew I could add value. And then I also saw what Anthony was putting together from him as well as his team that could just pour gasoline on the fire, so to speak, of what we were going to do. And I knew with the right team, with the right people, the sky's the limit, because Anthony knew what it took to grow a business, and he was just going to get better and stronger. And I knew what it took to grow a franchise business, And with that experience, and now with the second time around at StretchLab, I felt like I could do it better and faster, and with Xponential's help, because I couldn't have done it without Xponential's help and expertise. And one of the things that really I hope resonates with a lot of your listeners as they're considering this world of franchising. I say this all the time as I'm training franchise partners and through what we call our franchise training. It's all about people, and that's or another word for people is culture, and your people are your culture. And I go through this big long training during franchise training to try to teach people that maybe have never owned their own business before, or have never hopefully have been in a role of managing people, but maybe not to this level of like, okay, yes, I'm going to manage my team, but I'm the owner now. And you want to look at it as an opportunity. It's this opportunity to establish the right culture from the beginning. And culture doesn't happen overnight. Culture, just like a garden, you have to weed it, you have to nurture it, you've got to feed it. And the same thing with a business. And in order for a business to truly be successful, you need a strong culture. And so I knew what Anthony was building at Xponential was a strong culture, because he already had a really strong team around him at Club Pilates. He had a really strong president in Sean Grove, who is now the Rumble president at Club Pilates. And then he had actually Sarah Luna was working underneath Sean Grove at Club Pilates. Sarah Luna went on to be president of Pure Barre when we bought Pure Barre, and now she's the president of Xponential. So Anthony has the right mentality and mindset of like, hey, I can't do it completely on my own. I need good people around me. And I saw that, and that was one of I knew that from my previous experience. And when I started building StretchLab team, I was like, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure I have a really strong team. And so what did that look like? I was able to, I feel like part of me got lucky. I was able to hire some good people early on, but I also had to make some tough decisions early on. And I had to let a few people go early in StretchLab world on the corporate side, because I knew what I needed. I had grown a franchise to over 100 locations. I knew what was going to happen in the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, not predicting COVID, but just knowing, all right, we're going to sell. I know we're going to sell a lot of territories because we're Xponential Fitness. And then we're going to need to get a lot of studios open. And I had Club Pilates as this blueprint or roadmap that I could look at to be like, hey, in their early stages, in their first 1, 2, 3 years, this is their trajectory. And so I need people that are not only going to be good today with only 3 and then 4 and then 5 and then 6, 8, 9, 10 locations open, but I need people that are also going to be able to scale their skill set and to continue to be good and proficient and build this brand with me when we have 25 locations open and then 50 and then 75, 100 plus. And so I was able to, and this is the cool part, and this is the best part of the story that I love. How did I get into being named BFT president? It wasn't because of selling 600 territories and opening up 150 locations. That was good, obviously. It was because of the team I built at StretchLab. And I could move over here, promote one team member that I had been grooming, and like the clarity around what Anthony and Ryan Junk, who was the Cycle Bar president, who is now COO of Xponential Fitness. So we have this trend of promoting internally and building strong culture, getting your experience in the brand and promoting from within. I did the same thing inside StretchLab, and Anthony and Ryan, the clarity was StretchLab is a hot brand. It continues to be a hot brand. It's going to continue to be a hot brand. If we take Lou out of StretchLab, it can't do a nosedive. And so I had known this for years. And so really, I think an important skill set for a leader, I really looked at my job as president of StretchLab as taking this brand and running it, but it couldn't be dependent on me. And it was the success of it was just dependent on me. It needed to be the team, it needed to be the entity, it needed to be all about StretchLab. And so as much as possible, I tried to not make it about me. I knew I had a role of, making sure we were selling territories, finding good franchise partners and selling territories and getting them open. But that really just meant I needed to manage my team and the things that they need to do on a day-to-day basis. And then I, we have a fantastic new president of StretchLab, Verdine Baker is his name. I hired him as our national sales director. We worked together for those 4 years I was there. And I mean, work together. I mean, it was not only day in, day out, but evenings, weekends, like we were just connected at the hip. And so it was the franchise partners had this appreciation and respect for Verdine. The team, my corporate team, had an appreciation and respect for Verdine. Xponential knew what his skill set was. And it was like, oh yeah, like no big deal.
Yeah, it was natural, right?
The best part of the story was, StretchLab continues to crush it. And, he continues to carry on that legacy of StretchLab being the leader in this world of assisted stretching.
Hey there, it's Drew. Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Hey, dropping in to mention that if you're thinking about starting a business and curious if there's a franchise out there that's the right fit, I want to help you. I help people find and buy franchises. Whether you're a first-time business owner or a current franchisee thinking about getting into another franchise, I can help you quickly find some of the top emerging franchises in the country that want to expand to your area and then help you figure out if any of them are the right fit. And just like working with a real estate agent, there's no cost to you. If you want to hop on a call to discuss, reach out to me via my website, drewcarpenito.com, and I spell my first name, D-R-U. Yeah, there's so many nuggets of wisdom in that. I mean, it even just from the beginnings of StretchLab, like, okay, cool concept, stretching hasn't really been done before, but the concept is the concept. It takes the right people behind any business or any brand to take it to help it reach the potential that it's going to reach, which means execution, right? Like you guys have the playbook, you have the formula that works, but you have to execute it consistently. And then you have to help the franchisees execute it consistently within their areas and their markets. And, it sounds so simple. There's a lot of hard work and a lot of the right mindset and getting the right people in the right places that goes into that. But once you get it, you can see the results with what you guys have done with StretchLab, which is, and it just and StretchLab is one of these businesses that like, I call it the sleeper of all sleepers. Cause I think people look at it, you're like, what? Like stretching? And I'm like, yeah, but it's not just stretching. It's exponential. It's this market, there's a vast market for customers and people who can benefit from stretching. It's such a cool concept because I think it's underestimated a lot of times. Then once you start peeling back the onion and you see in the business and then you see the team of people behind it, you're like, holy moly, this is a monster in a good way.
Yeah. Well, it's also, it's a part of this world of health and fitness, but it's more wellness, and I think there is one of the benefits that I think as a society will get coming out of COVID is a deeper focus, more focus on health, fitness, and wellness. And so that's why I think Xponential Fitness is poised to continue to be super successful in the future. We have really 9 fitness brands and then 1 wellness brand in StretchLab. And, who knows where this will continue to go. I'm not on that side of the business to figure out which are we going to buy more brands? What brands are they going to be? Where are they going to fall? But I'm sure there will be more acquisitions in the future. And the nice part about Xponential Fitness as a parent company is that we are focused on making boutique fitness and wellness accessible to the masses, accessible to everyone. And it was a big miss, in my personal opinion, it was a big miss from our government or society, whoever you want to blame and point fingers at during COVID. Is like one of the first things they shut down was like fitness. And what did we learn about COVID? Now, I know some people, we didn't know in early stages, but your cardiovascular health is critically important if you get any kind of virus or the flu or COVID, your cardiovascular health, incredibly important. And how do you impact that? You move your body every single day. You be careful with what you put in your body. You try to put good stuff in your body. And if you do those two things consistently, you're going to be healthy and you're going to live a long life. And that's what we're all after, is longevity and quality of life. And I think boutique fitness and wellness is well poised to take advantage of people that have that are prioritizing that more and more. It's no longer a luxury. Boutique fitness is no longer a luxury. And even some of these wellness concepts like StretchLab, it's no longer a luxury. It's like, okay, in order for me to live my best life, to be the person I want to be and to achieve what I want to achieve, I know I need to move my body and take care of my body, and also make sure I'm putting good stuff in my body, whether you want to, I won't get into nitty gritty of food and supplements and all, like spend hours on that. So it's a huge and growing industry, boutique fitness and wellness. It will continue to grow. And that's the fun part about this, is that the sky's the limit, and not just for Xponential, but for other brands as well. So this is a really an industry that, we always joke saying boutique fitness has been a fad for the past 20 years.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's not going anywhere, people. It's here to stay, and it will now there'll be brands that come and go.
Right.
And that's also why, if you're considering franchising, you want to look at who is the franchisor, and is this the brand that has long-term staying power? Because the world of and you see this more than I do, Drew, the world of franchising just continues to grow and grow. And that's a good thing too. There's more and more brands that decide to franchise every single year. So the world of franchising is maturing and growing. And this is where your value, Drew, as a franchise consultant comes into play, because how does a consumer, someone that's potentially interested in franchising but hasn't spent the last 10, 15 years like we have in franchising, how do they navigate this world? And I'll tell people all the time, like, talk to a franchise consultant. Don't just take my word for it, because I just work in this one little brand.
Yeah, one little brand with this one little publicly traded company. Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think you're right, because when I think especially first time franchise owners, right, or first time business owners, they're thinking about franchising. Everybody falls in love with the idea of owning your own business, and the seduction of a concept or a brand, like they see something, they're like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about that business, and this is it. They've created this, but that doesn't mean anything, because Xponential and the story that you just shared, like that's like the people behind the brand, like that's the stuff that makes the difference. That's the stuff that separates the great franchises from the ones that maybe are good, and definitely the ones that aren't so good. It's all this stuff behind the scenes, and it sounds like you kind of recognize that too. Like when you were, when after your rise with the first boutique fitness franchise, taking that nationally, like, Anthony did a really good job of bringing in the right people, but it sounds like he also did a good job of bringing in the right capital too. Like there was capital there to fuel the growth, which building a franchise system is no small feat. Like this doesn't, I think a lot of people, even franchisees, think that, oh, I paid this franchise fee and I paid these royalties, and that's money going to this corporate office, and they're getting rich. But a lot of the really good franchise companies are reinvesting that money right away, and they're losing money for many years until there's a critical mass of the royalties, and the royalties is where you want a franchise company living off of, not the franchise fees.
Yes.
And that's, it's one of these things that I think it's candidly, it's hard to get people to appreciate a lot of those layers that go into kind of figuring out if a franchise is the real deal and has the right pieces and people in place to take it nationally, or where it doesn't, right? Because any company can franchise, to be honest with you. You
can. I mean, that's the scary part. And that's why it's important that the franchise industry matures, and it is maturing. And because the allure of franchising is to quickly grow a brand nationally with very little capital behind it, because, oh, well, my franchisee is going to not only pay me a franchise fee to have a territory, but then they're going to foot the bill to get open, and I just have to teach them. But there's way more to it than meets the eye. And there was a bunch of years ago, I remember there was this controversial article in franchising that came out. A well-known franchise consultant wrote this article in one of the franchise publications, and the general idea of it was a franchisor. If you're thinking about franchising and becoming a franchisor, you need at least $1 to $2 million to appropriately launch a brand and to be a sustainable long-term franchise. And he caught all this flack because at the time it was very popular to start franchising your business and to be, and this whole idea that you could do it for very little money. And I didn't understand, like I saw, because I was early in my franchising days, and I actually saw the side, I was agreed with the side, like, yeah, this is like, you can franchise for very little money. What do you mean $1 million to $2 million? That's a crazy amount of money.
Right. Just get an FTD and we're good to go.
Yeah. Like, I mean, oh, okay. So you need to pay an attorney to draft. Okay. Now, but the good part, and now this was at least 10 plus years ago. So the good news is franchising in the industry continues to mature, and franchising is governed by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. And there's more and more, whether we like it or not, more and more attorneys and litigation has happened in franchising. And I think overall it's a good thing because it's making the franchising industry mature, and the more mature brands are just solidifying themselves for being here for the longer term. And then the younger brands that are trying to launch on the cheap are realizing, oh, I can't, because there's more educated people are coming into franchising and looking behind the curtain and saying, whoa, wait a second, let me look at your balance sheet. Let me look at your P&L. How many franchise territories have you sold, and how many have you opened, and how are they doing? Not just your corporate location, but how are franchisees doing? Let me talk to them. So all these different areas of franchising, we're starting to shine more lights on not only corporate run locations, but franchisee locations and validation, it's called. And Xponential does a really good job of investing in the brand. And that's where I think a lot of people underestimate, and where a lot of that 1 to 2 million or whatever it's more now. You should need more now, because it's not just throwing an FTD together. It's actually having, potential either multiple locations that are operating. So it's not just one, and it's like one store in the best location possible in the entire United States. And of course it's doing well. You need to have multiple locations, you need to have franchisees. And that's really, early on, it's healthy to have a somewhat slower growth of a franchise if you don't have a lot of capital, because that's how you're going to grow, and success breeds success. And even if you're growing fast, like Xponential has, we still have a very intense focus on those very first early 5, 10, 15 locations. And if they're not all wildly successful, then we invest more time and more money into making sure they are wildly successful. And that's what a good franchisor should do, because that's the only way to have 100, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 900 locations eventually, is to improve the model early. Know you're going to make failures, you're going to make mistakes, but you have to have the infrastructure and the capital and the support to fix those mistakes so that you can keep growing.
Yeah. And there's very well said, because I think like we talked about earlier, like there's an evolution of franchising that's happening, because now it's getting pretty sophisticated in terms of like what the really good franchise companies are doing to implement in terms of infrastructure and software and marketing and digital ad campaigns and all different things to help their franchisees be successful. Because I mean, at the end of the day, if you kind of boil it down, right, if you help the franchise owners be happy and be profitable, like you're generally going to be okay as a franchise company. But if one of those two things is off, it's you
just hit the nail on the head. Those two things are the most important for a franchisor. Are your franchisees happy, and are they making money? And they're related. because, it comes back to, and your job and my job is we're aligned in that any franchise prospect, we want to get them into a franchise concept that they would like and that they can be passionate about. So that's a part of the happiness factor, is like, are they doing something that they're pinching themselves every morning saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe I get up every single day and go work in this industry. It could be food, it could be fitness, it could be cleaning windows, whatever their passion is. That's important that we help them find that and then help them make money at it. And as a franchisor, I tell my team that all the time. Are they passionate about what they're doing, or are they making money? Let's help solve both of those. And if they're not making money, we can help them figure out how to make money because we have those systems in place. We do marketing in boutique fitness better than anyone. We do sales in boutique fitness better than anyone. And then the customer experience inside each brand, we do it better than anyone. We've got those pieces of the puzzle figured out. What I can't necessarily solve for, but I can help with is, are you passionate about this? Are you having fun doing this? I can lay out for you, hey, here's what you have to do. But if you're not happy doing it, then I didn't do a good job, or you, Drew, didn't do a good job in finding the right franchise concept for them.
Right.
And
it's
that's
not
the beauty of it.
And it's not so much like, because this is, I think, one of the big points we can kind of dig into and clarify a little bit, especially for first-time franchise owners who might be listening. Like, you're not looking for somebody who's passionate about stretching somebody out on one of the tables in the StretchLab, or even in your new brand, BFT. You're not looking for the owner to be the instructor that's going to be, there at the studio every single day teaching every single class. Like, obviously they have to be aligned to be passionate about the idea of owning a business that is helping people live a healthier lifestyle and having an impact in their lives. But they also have to be passionate about building a team of people. Like, that has to scratch a big itch that they have.
Absolutely.
Because that's what your whole model is built around. You don't want the owners involved in the day-to-day and interfacing with the customers too much, because if they are, then they're not scaling the business to what you guys know the potential of these businesses can be. You're looking for folks to come in and build a team, hire a manager, work through their team, create the culture like you talked about, and then execute the proven moves that you guys have developed that works with digital advertising and then the sales and all that stuff. It's a small detail, but it's a massive detail, because there's a lot of franchise companies that want the operator. Like, they want the instructor, they want the owner to be the instructor and teaching the classes and doing all that. But you guys don't want that, right? You want somebody.
I mean, it's probably 5 to 10% of our franchise are people that are coming in, and we call them owner operators. And that's what they're looking for. And we can accommodate that. Like, we're not going to say, no, you can't do that. You can. But we believe the beauty of franchising and the big picture opportunity in franchising is scaling. And that's what the systems of any franchise system should give you as a potential owner, is the ability to scale. And when I say scale, I mean owning multiple units. And that's what gets us excited. That's what gets me excited. I also had the experience in the brand I was operating before I came to Xponential, where we had 5 corporate locations. So we had a franchise system of over 100 locations. And I always call it my day job. I was the president of the franchise with 100 locations. And then my side hustle was I was operating 5 locations. And now I didn't personally own them, but that was being the president of the franchise. That was also my responsibility. And that was really where and it didn't start with 5 right away. It was, we took one on and we're like, hey, I can do this. Let's take a second one on. And then there was a third, and then a fourth, and then a fifth. And I love telling that story in franchise training to all of our franchise partners, because it's not like I'm not sitting here in an ivory tower saying, hey, this is best practice of what you should do. Don't ask me any details, because I've never done it before myself, but this is what I think you should do. Like, I've been up in the gym at 5 a.m., at 10 p.m., cleaning toilets, living at the front desk, working weekends, jumping in to teach classes when needed. Like I lived that and I loved it. Now, do I want to do it all the time, every single day? No, I like the business side and I want to scale. And then in this franchise world, I got to live and breathe. I have a full-time job over here with responsibilities because that's what supports my family. But then I have this ownership responsibility over here of these 5 locations, and I've got a GM in each location, and I can't be in all locations at once. I can't be there selling the membership. If a trainer gives notice, like, how am I going to deal with that? And that's where I learned the value of what we call internally meeting rhythms. And for anyone that's looking to scale, it's really simple. You can't clone yourself and be in 2 locations at once, or 3 or 4 or 5. So the next best thing is you need to have good people. So back to what we talked about before, having the right people in place so that you're establishing the right culture. And then what helps establish the right culture, because you can't, it's like a garden. You can't just plant things and hope that they grow into this beautiful tomato plant that has these succulent tomatoes. Like that's not going to happen unless you water it and you weed it and you nurture it and you make sure it's getting the right sunlight, not too much sunlight. So these meeting rhythms are daily, weekly, monthly, and there's no magic behind it. It's not like this super secret sauce. Check in with your GMs once a day so you know what they're doing and they know what you want them to do. So it's a really simple, like, hey, what's on the plate for today? What are you doing today? How many appointments do you have scheduled for today? How are we getting leads in the door, and how are we converting them into memberships? That's the secret sauce of boutique fitness. Weekly, some kind of weekly meeting with your sales team so that you're reviewing, like, hey, last week, here's how many leads we had. Here's how many appointments. Here's how many sales we made. Good job, high five, or not as good as we needed. We need to do better here and here. So this week, here are our goals, and everyone's aligned on a monthly basis, full team meeting, everyone on your team. And so I learned that really early on, that, and this is the other part that it teaches people that are new into franchising and potentially owning multiple locations. Because you can't clone yourself and be in 2, 3, 4 locations at once, you have to delegate. You don't have a choice. As you could be a control freak, and you're going to realize real quickly, you're going to get stressed out real quickly, and you can't control everything. You have to trust. You have to delegate and trust, but then you just make sure you have a system of checks and balances in place that you know, the old saying, trust but verify.
Yeah.
Trust someone to do the job, but your daily and weekly meetings is where you verify that they're doing the work that you want them to do. And if they're not doing the work that you want them to do, then you have the conversation. Right. And you say, hey, Drew, I asked you to do, you know, all of these marketing activities this week, or, you know, I asked you to knock on 3 doors a day this week and you didn't do it. Or I asked you to make 20 phone calls each day and you only made 10. Like, what happened? Did something get in the way? How can I help you? And that's where, as a multi-unit owner, you need to know enough about what happens on the day-to-day to dive into the details and ask the right questions, but you're not doing it all. You're having someone else do it. And that's where it really is this, running a business is never absentee. That's another fallacy in this world of franchising. Oh, I'm just going to buy into a franchise.
Put some money in, and franchise company is going to do everything and just going to magically put money into my bank account. And yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Like, as you were like, you were just talking through all that, I was reminded, I had Steve Heitzman, who's a multi-unit franchisee with StretchLab here in Charlotte, where I am. And Steve was talking about his meeting routines, because he's also a high flying executive at a big company. Right. And he chooses that life. Like, I think he could, a lot of that's a choice by him. And so he's doing very well, has 4 StretchLab studios open, 2 more, right, and thinking of scaling past that. But he talked about, like, the art of getting into a good cadence of the meetings that he has with his team and key people, and also goal setting. like setting goals and it goes back to what you said, being transparent with his team and helping them understand why the goals are what the goals are, and how, putting some nice incentives in place that if the team hits the goals, then, everybody can participate in something that as the company's benefiting, so can some of the employees. But as you say all that, like running, like the art of running a good meeting, like it is a skill. It is not just a hold a meeting, have it, and, just to say you had the meeting. Like it is a skill that you can refine over time. And I think as you get better at it, right? Like the meetings tend to get more efficient, shorter to the point, and everybody gets on the same page. And that's how, that's the cadence that you can just kind of rinse and repeat, and a simple thing that you can do to scale into multi-units.
Yeah. It's the most basic but critical thing that any multi-unit owner can do. Even a single unit owner, you want to transfer your skill set from being an owner operator, which is there's some value in starting with one location and really rolling your sleeves up and spending a lot of hours early in the business so that you learn the lingo, you learn the methodology, or you learn the natural rhythms of the business. We teach this also from a boutique fitness standpoint. We have a monthly sales cycle. Some people have never worked in a business model that has a monthly sales cycle. So we have to teach that. And it's important that some early owners that don't have experience in that they spend 3-6 months in it. Maybe they're not the GM, but maybe they're shoulder to shoulder with their GM running through, what does this month look like? It's April 20th. So we have, across Xponential, we have a fast start, we have a mid-month closeout, and we have a month-end closeout. And that's just internal terminology to get people used to this monthly sales cycle. So sometimes you got to be in it first to be able to then step away and stay at this higher level. So from an org chart standpoint, you always want to be up here, and you may have to jump in to, be the GM for a moment or be a head trainer for the moment. But ultimately, you still have this responsibility of being the owner. And then you want to continue to build that org chart so that one location, you're building a second location with the same org chart, third location with the same org chart. And then you scale the middle where you put in, we call it area manager or district manager, so that GM quits, it doesn't impact you in your daily life because you have a district manager that can step in, or you have someone beneath them that's a sales associate or sales manager that can step up and become the general manager. So as you build more locations, you're also building out your org chart, and a good franchisor will help with that as well. Understanding how to scale the business, not just, hey, just go sign more leases. What do you like? What kind of help do you need? Here's some, go talk with people about funding or lending and just go sign leases. There's a lot more to it. And a good franchisor will help you navigate all of the pieces of the puzzle that start with financing. And there's all kinds of financing out there. And that's a good time also to be looking into franchising. Signing leases, coming out of COVID, it was a real good time to sign leases. And the same thing, a lot of our franchise partners at StretchLab over the last year and a half, just super excited to sign more leases because they knew they were onto the right brand, and it was going to continue to grow. So they had no problem signing leases. And then the org chart and the people and the recruiting. And it's when you're with the right brand and the brand is growing, that actually helps you to recruit people easier as well. So it really does. It comes down to, for me, and I'm talking with when I'm talking with franchise prospects, what are you passionate about? And then you need to find the right franchisor that's in that industry that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And once you kind of, like, back to my analogy earlier of getting over that big risk hurdle of, I'm going to make that money, but I have upside, and I'm going to be in an industry that I love. And there's really not a lot of downside because I could always go back and look for something else. I had those like risk factors that I had to mitigate. In the world of franchising, if you're looking at investing in a franchise, passion, because it's not just a job. You don't want to buy yourself a job. You want to buy something that you're passionate about because this is what excites you and lights you up every day. And the quality of the franchisor has to be there because You want them to be around for much longer than you're going to be around in the brand. And that's the better franchisors see. I mean, there's all kinds of private equity that's pouring into franchising now. That's a good thing. I say that as a positive because they see the value when private equity is investing in an industry like franchising. It's because they see long-term value in this, and they see this royalty stream as long-term value, and they're going to invest in brands that have long-term value. So that's a good thing for all of us in franchising, and for any potential candidates that you're working with that are thinking about franchising, because it's another check the box of like, okay, franchising is maturing as an industry, and this is a good industry to be in. Whether you're investing in short term, some of my franchise partners come in and they're like, hey, I have a 3 to 5 year window. I want to open 3 locations and grow and expand and get my return on investment over that 3 to 5 year window. And then I want to sell them to someone else. And that's going to be a big chunk of money I get because I'm going to have all of my debt paid off by then. Other people come in without that mindset and they're like, hey, I don't know what my long-term vision is going to be, but I know I'm passionate about health, fitness, wellness, and I want to be in this industry. Maybe it is 5 years, maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's longer. I don't know, but I know I want to connect with the right franchisor because I have a long-term vision for this as well.
Have you, speaking of private equity, have you started to see any private equity sniffing around in trying to consolidate or gobble up some of the franchisees that are ready to exit across any of the Expo brands?
Yeah, we do. It's slowly starting to happen, which is again on the on that. When you look at the business side of franchising, and is it a good thing or a bad thing? We always say it's a good thing that private equity is starting to look at not just investing in franchisors, but also looking at the franchisee side and starting to consolidate with good operators, going from, not just 3 locations, but private equity looking to go to 10, 25, 50 locations or more. So there are some private equity groups that either have already or starting to and looking at consolidating in some of our more mature brands. And then some of our younger brands, that will happen in the long term because our parent company is Xponential Fitness.
It's funny. And I randomly just asked that question and I realized I was like, I got an email today from a private investor, like one of these quote unquote third-party market research firms, about Xponential Fitness. And, since you're publicly traded, I can't imagine that it's, has much to do with the stock investing, since all that information's out there. Right. So that's interesting. Right. Yeah. Anyways, randomly, I forgot about that. Okay. So real quick, before we wrap up, would love to just kind of get the quick 30,000 foot view on Body Fit Training, BFT, the new brand that you're the president of and are leading up. Can you maybe just give us a couple minutes, kind of where BFT is, what it is, and kind of your vision for the brand?
Yeah, I would love to. So BFT was the 10th brand underneath the Xponential Fitness umbrella. Slightly different from some of our other brands, definitely different from StretchLab. We talked about that. StretchLab was not a franchise, 3 locations in LA, new modality. So kind of the opposite, where BFT was already an internationally established boutique fitness brand. When we purchased it at the end of last year, almost 150 locations internationally, but only 2 in the US. So they started in Australia. The founders started in Australia, and they've expanded into New Zealand and Singapore. And most recently, they've started selling licenses in the UK. And so again, another unique part of this relationship with Xponential Fitness owns the brand now. So there's a transaction, we own the brand. We will, just like all of our other boutique fitness and wellness brands, we will award territories and support our franchise partners in the US and Canada. And then we will look to find master franchisees across the world as we expand. And the founders in conjunction with the purchase of BFT and us becoming the franchisor now, Xponential Fitness is the franchisor, we signed a master franchise agreement with the founders. So they stay on board. They continue to support with their team in Australia, the Australian franchise partners, New Zealand, Singapore, and eventually the UK. So it's been a lot of fun. I've jumped in mid-February, basically, so about 2 months now of taking over BFT. I transitioned with StretchLab and, worked hand in hand with Verdine for a bit as we transitioned and got into the world of BFT and who is it, what makes it special. And so I'll give you a couple of key things about BFT, what makes it special. First, I'll give you the 3 words that we use to describe BFT, and this came directly from the founders. They describe BFT as group strength training, and that is who we are and what we do. The founders saw a hole in this niche market of strength training. They saw in the industry, they saw CrossFit on one end of the spectrum, which is, a lot of strength training. But for the people on this listening to this, if you know CrossFit, you know the details of CrossFit and who they are. They've done a fantastic job of building this cult following. They took some of the positives from CrossFit. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have an Orange Theory and F45. Those are more high intensity interval training workouts where you're just, raising your heart rate to a certain level multiple days a week. We took some of what was good out of those brands too. The founders built BFT. Group strength training. On average, a member at BFT comes almost 5 times per week. So that's where it's similar to a CrossFit, where people are coming a lot of days per week. How can you come in 5 days a week and not burn yourself out? So that's some of the science behind BFT and how we differentiate ourselves. So we use this thing called periodization, fancy word in the world of strength and conditioning that means we're going to program your workouts so that they're different every single day. And these different workouts each day are going to work different muscle groups in different planes of movement and work different energy systems. Really important and a big differentiator from any high intensity interval training workout, because those high intensity interval training workouts, on average, they're going 2 days a week and maximum 3 days a week, and then your body's burnt out. So BFT is programming the training so that you can come in and work out every day if you want to and not burn out and not injure yourself. Again, a big differentiator from one of our competitors out there.
Right. That's interesting. So it's a little bit like CrossFit 2.0 wrapped into a boutique fitness model with a lot of technology and the exponential playbook behind it to help it scale. And you see there's
Absolutely.
2 studios open in the US. So the US is largely open, but I would imagine knowing Expo that you've probably already had some activity on the new license front. And you've been doing this for 2.5 months? Is that what you said?
Yeah, mid-February. So
Wow.
Really like 2 months. So yeah, just in traditional exponential fashion, we've awarded over 50 territories already.
Wow.
And we've got, but in general, the US market is still pretty wide open.
Yeah, well, 50 is nothing for 50 is nothing for you guys. Like, come on, give me a break. No, I'm just kidding. But so are you seeing some Expo franchisees of other brands moving into BFT early?
It's been a good mix. Early on, we were able to announce to our franchise partners before we announced to the world, hey, we purchased BFT and this is going to be an opportunity for you. So we definitely had some existing franchise partners at our other brands raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested, and they've come on and purchased BFT. So that's really nice for us. And that's an opportunity for our existing franchise partners to buy any existing brand and expand their footprint in their same area or territory if it's available.
Right.
And then we've had some new partners as well. And this is the cool part. And this is how we always come back to, like, what's your passion? What drives you day in, day out? One of the common themes that every single one of our new franchise partners has in common with BFT, they've come through the process and come through our confirmation day. And the common theme is hey, Lou, this is how I work out. I love working out this way. I can't wait to bring this into my community. This is what I love and I'm passionate about. So we're off to a good start with our early franchise partners. There definitely is that passion there. And they also see the business opportunity of growing and scaling, for example, I mean, this is the beauty of franchising. We'll have some people that come in and buy a single location here or there. On average at Xponential, our franchise partners are buying a 3-pack, we call it, which are 3 territories. We give a discount on the franchise fees for 3 or more. But then we had an existing franchise Club Pilates franchise partner come in and buy out all of Nashville.
Wow.
Nashville is sold out for BFT. Sorry for anyone that was interested in Nashville, but the good news is we'll have some BFTs open soon in Nashville. So,
no doubt,
those are the opportunities that are out there. When you talk about scaling, everyone is on their own path as well. So you may just be considering one location, like, hey, that's all I can handle. But that may change in a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And then someone like a Steve Heitzman Steve came in and bought 3 territories to start out and started down the path of signing 1 lease and then a 2nd lease, and then bought 3 more territories, realizing like, oh, this could be big. I want to own all of my territory. And now that he's got 4 open and he sees what he can do and how he has scaled, now he's thinking about going even bigger than that. So the story, I love that franchising can give anyone the story, whatever your personal story you want it to be, it's there. It always comes back to trying to find something that you're passionate about. And franchising, I think, is a great vehicle to give people that opportunity to scale something that they're passionate about.
Yeah, no doubt. And getting hooked up with the right franchise company, not just the widget, every single layer and all the pieces of the puzzle. And I think Xponential does an amazing job of, setting the benchmark really, really high that not every franchise company is going to be able to attain, but also bringing people on like you, that have had success and continue to have success, taking and leading brands nationally. So good stuff, man. Well, Lou, man, I appreciate you joining. Thank you for sharing and dropping some great wisdom on here. I know there's a lot to absorb from a lot of different angles from everything that you shared. So thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I love talking about this. I love talking about the business side. And so thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Always love spending time with you.
Yeah, man. I'll see you at the next conference.
All right.
That's a wrap. Hope you found a nugget or 2 in there that can help you on your franchise journey. And if you ever want to talk franchising, reach out to me anytime.